Good afternoon, good evening. Today is Tuesday, second day of a full week, August 27th, 2024. Our goal here is to review the day's market generated information in a holistic fashion. We are intimately following the auction's narrative for both ES and NQ. If we have time, we'll theorize and add additional commentary towards the end. We did speculate in the market today. Please see our uploaded video if you'd like. It contains our real time analysis. We use these archives as a tool for our development. All right, let's begin. All right, so we are going to start with our summary questions. And before we go there, actually, do remember I do recommend that you watch our month end video that we have, just preparing for this week. We did on Sunday. Everything still holds true. It's less about the specific price action that has happened and what we may see, and more of the types of environment and the general movement that may happen, things to kind of be on the lookout for. Primarily concepts, just like our overnight auctions may become more into play. You may see, just be on the lookout for the way the delta and the volumes are moving overnight. We saw a little bit of that today. We'll kind of go into our overnight action, and see if we can just glean a little bit from there. But I won't get ahead of myself. I digress. So our typical questions: where's the market coming from, and what did the market try to accomplish? So again, I won't belabor the idea, but we've been mentioning several times about this balance that we've had here coming from this bull flag, which appears to possibly have stalled out just a little bit. We'll look at the details on exactly what happened, but we're just in the middle of this balance range. Really nothing is going on too much here for the S&P 500. That's not necessarily the case for NQ, who'd had more of a thrust down day on the Wednesday, I believe. Volume still increasing, and we found our way towards the end of this balance for last week. We can look more at the profile for a little more details, but we won't get ahead of ourselves. So the goal for S&P 500 and the Nasdaq were two different ones. For the ES, it was continue to build volume higher, and for NQ, they did exactly what they should have, which was to just use below as support. Not necessarily defend any particular levels. Ideally, we would have held here, and they pretty much got here to the tick, which is the low of the August 16th candle, which is about the 19,000s 440s. I believe we mentioned this in one of our other videos here. They ended up going down there perfectly and it's pretty much just bouncing off. So really, the first real pullback for technology ended up being picked up. So which is nice from the Bulls. So I think both completed their goals while different. Um, they completed their goals. We'll look at the details and see how they performed. And let's start by looking at the catalyst that we had for the docket today. Not too much for the earnings for today. Big shout out to the NVIDIA and CrowdStrike, primarily NVIDIA, excuse me. Let me not even put these two in the same name. But for sure, NVIDIA, maybe CrowdStrike, may be something to look into as well. For the economic calendar, all we had was the 6 a.m. and the 7 a.m. Again, fairly low priority, but I'll double check for the SOC. Definitely not anything for the 6 a.m. For the 7 a.m., I believe it was somewhat of a muted action as well. So you just want to take that one with a little grain of salt. And then looking at the actual sector tracker, we can see where we held. Excuse me, let me go back. I didn't really put too much emphasis on that. Um, Ideally, we're still within this Wednesday, Thursday candles. So really not too much is going on there. Still finding balance. And again, same situation here for the NQ. Pretty much just drifted a little lower, but we're right back in this balance range. So just on the lower third of it. Let's see, let's put this back. Okay. So going back to our sector tracker for the S&P 500, you can see we pretty much ended basically neutral for the day, up 16 basis points, with the leaders being technology and financials to the upside, and then primarily utilities and energies to the downside. So I'm a little confused on this one here, to be perfectly honest. I understand that discretionary and communications ended up slightly red. But I believe it was more the situation of healthcare and industrials basically being flat for the day. So not much energy coming from XLB, I, and V. And then these top three up here, communications, discretionary, and staples. Not too much here, just a lot of balancing out from what we can see. So I'll say this is a little less for the breadth, but I don't know. This just seems just more of like a sitting sideways day as we head into the video, which is highly anticipated for everyone. All right. So looking exactly how the sectors perform, we don't have the tracker for the NQ, but let's look how they performed on the daily footprint. You can see the majority of volume. Oh, my apologies. Majority of volume was done towards the highs, that top quarter, which where you saw the sell, the majority of those sell imbalances, but definitely you had buyers meeting them right there and pushing it a bit higher. I would imagine this could have been some of the sellers liquidating their positions. This is still relatively lower volume comparing to last week. It's about in range. Delta is not really too much to look at. It's positive 2K. Again, this is lighter volume, so you want to take that with a grain of salt. The range was 250, which is fairly tight. And then looking at the S&P 500, a range of 40, about neutral for the Delta, and still about lower volume, but very similar to last week. I'd imagine the volume is going to increase coming into tomorrow, towards the end of the day, rather, for NVIDIA, and then possibly the overnight session for Wednesday night headed into Thursday's RTH session. I would imagine we're going to see some positioning across the board for NVIDIA, but again, we'll say the speculation for later. My apologies. So we see how we performed on the footprint, looking at the delta and the volume. Let's see where that volume actually transpired, and is there anything noteworthy here from the market profile? So again, we have our composite that goes back to middle of April. We have the second and the third week candle here for the composite that we're looking at. And then we have the Monday session, which was yesterday, and then Tuesday. So again, it's fairly tight range. Not much has happened over these past 2 days. We're still just bouncing higher, still flirting with this VPOC zone. Very powerful. A lot of volume traded here, and we're pretty much just stuck here as of right now. This even goes back to a high volume node. Actually, this is the VPOC for the damn composite that goes back to April and for the past 2 weeks as well. So we're just stuck here. This is the most agreed price, and it makes sense for us to be here as we head into the videos open. So I mean, let me not be dramatic or anything, but we've had all this auction that's taken place. You look at all this auction that's taken place from the 5700s down to this 5100s basically, and all this, we're still back at our most traded price. I believe that's pretty poetic, and which is why I like looking at the market profile. But I digress. We'll say that for another time. We're still sitting here at these 27s, but we ended up bouncing off of that support, and now we're back into this for the composite volume pointer control. Let me actually switch this name. So I mean, as of right now, we're just building more volume between these two prices here, these two zones. So again, not really much is happening here. I don't think there's too much to look at. There are no singles or anything like that, no crazy action. This is just more consolidation. If you kind of put these together, looking like a nice little puzzle. Just the majority of the volume is taken the middle to the lower half of this section here. So not much action is happening above the 5650s. The majority is happening between the 50s and the 20s. Let's say the 20s and the 30s. Yeah. No, yeah, the 50s and the 20s. That's right. So yeah, pretty much from the 50s to the 20s. The majority of volume is just happening here, and you can see that if we merge these two profiles, but I think you get my point. So again, not much has happened here, and we're leaving this as 50 to 60 candles. So again, not much is happening here. We're still sitting here at these 27s, but we ended up bouncing off of that support, and now we're back into this for the composite volume pointer control. Let me actually switch this name. So again, not much is happening here, and we're leaving this as This was red. This was former support, turning resistance. We're actually just going to turn this into a purple zone. So we just understand the significance. The more time we build above here, we're definitely going to be looking at these all-time highs, and it's definitely not out of the question as we head into the earnings for tomorrow for NVIDIA. Looking at the NQ, we did have singles below us. I'm sorry, we had singles below us, and we had singles above us, which was from yesterday. We tore through, excuse me, the buyers tore through a fair amount of these singles from the Monday's action, from the kind of coiling and then the slip through. Price was unable to get back above the 640s for the NQ. However, today, you can see we ended up trying to get into that zone, ended up selling off a little bit, found our way back into that range. We were able to get them a good chunk of it. That's actually not the right drawing. We're able to get a good chunk of those earnings, of those singles rather. So we're gonna clear up the rest of those. We still have a little bit left, and that's a little above the 700s. Yeah, around the 19,700s. So there's something to be on the lookout today. Do notice we are selling off a little bit in the overnight session. We're already down about 90 points. So something just to be out on the look for. See if we're able to get back to those singles. That may be a potential target, depending on where we're coming from. But again, that's more speculation. So we'll hold off there. So we ended up merging those two profiles. And again, we're just really stuck in a high volume node here. Same situation, but just different context for the NASDAQ. All right, we'll go ahead and save this here. So we have a good understanding of where we are on the monthlies, which is really not much has changed. On the weeklies, the daily, same situation here. Same pathway for the for technology, the monthly, the weekly, the daily. We look at the footprint, we look at the market profile. We'll take a quick break and look at the candle structures. All right, before we look at the candles, actually, let's take a quick glance at the 138-minute candle. I'll give you a moment to kind of stop if you like and just see how we're looking. Just kind of let that get into our eyes. You can kind of see where we're trading at the 2-hour and 18-minute candle. Okay. Same situation here for the S&P 500. Okay. And let's look at the 65-minute footprint for the S&P 500 before we look at the candles. We can see how this actually happened. Again, lighter volumes. We won't look too much into this. If it's like less than a million, I'm really not. I mean, if it's less than like really 1.3, 1.4 million, I'm not gonna look too much into this. But the game theory still holds. So you're just we're looking at our delta here and how much volume is taken, the higher volume and just gradually decrease, which makes sense. Nothing really transpired in here. You can see the sellers were kind of stuck here. They never really had a chance to get out. So we pretty much just bull flag just the entire time for the for the Nasdaq. Same situation here, except the range was a little tighter. We had some sort of a pullback with the S&P 500. I'm assuming this was a discretionary, the communications, and the lack of movement from healthcare, industrials, and materials, which is why it's important for us to look at the sectors first so we can understand like why this happened. And it's not just arbitrary or like, sure, just buyers and sellers. We were actually trying to look at the actual flow of the money. So really not too much to show here. Sellers definitely had some decent positioning, ended up pushing it down, ended up being balanced for the delta. A lot of exertion, push forward, and basically just sat sideways. Yeah, just equilibriums towards the end. But okay, cool. All right, we shall look at the candle structures here. Let's start with the NQ. All right, so today was interesting. Same situation here. We have our Sunday night over session, our Sunday night overnight session. Steep sell off, bounce, bear flag into the close. We sit sideways, break the low before open for NASDAQ. So we're extremely weak as we're heading into the session. So time has passed, and I have not looked at my RTH archive video yet, but I do remember it seeming a little bearish, but nothing was. There was no true aggression from the seller side, which I think is why it's important for you to just kind of skim through the videos for your, the first 2.5 hours. Maybe it's something you want to look at, but just look at the way the DOM was happening here on this open test drive. If I'm not mistaken, I made a comment that this looked quite similar to yesterday, but just in the reverse, if I'm not mistaken. Same open test drive, and then we kind of leak lower. Same situation. Unless maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Open test drive, and then we just leak higher or squeeze higher. So just something to look at, just something to look at. We want to pay attention to how the market is moving this week, but we won't spend too much time on that. Chop sideways, a little up, a little down, but we just keep going down until the RTH. We had like a little small little relief rally, saying if we can push up, completely liquidate that zone. Strong bars, 3 bars, 3 bars down. Actually, I mean all these bars are down, just like straight line here, but definitely some fighting that was happening from the buyer side, but they were being swallowed by the sellers. We need to look it up, and we need to look at our archive, so we're not just bullshitting you, to be honest. But we did have this nice engulfing candle here, and I would need to see this in real time again. You can definitely see the difference when I've looked at the video prior to doing my recap. The DOM is very important to me, and the way we trade it just gives me clues on how this is actually transpiring, because I just can't say, you can't just look at these candles and say like all buyers are extremely strong, and just exactly like what happened. This could have just been a offer pool, if you will. The book could have got thin, and price just kind of went up and held. Who knows? But I digress. So we're looking at a possible open drive, if not an open rejection reverse or open test drive, however you're looking. But as soon as we had this engulfing candle here, we closed above the midpoint and the 5 smoothing average and our full session VWAP, and basically just drifted above, held above this 5 smoothing average the whole time. We did have our 7 a.m. data, which wasn't really too much. It was all bound between this consolidation zone here, broke out of that consolidation zone, consolidated a little again, broke again, consolidated. So I mean, at this point, I was getting ready to run an errand because we were just kind of just stuck trying to go short in here. This is like a clear sign of a trend day, holding above this 5 smoothing average on this 3-minute candle, and this coiling, breaking out. I mean, this is literally this is like an example of a fractal. This is the same thing here. You coil, you impulse, you coil, you impulse, you coil, you impulse, you coil. What's next? Especially with NVIDIA earning something. I digress. We end up closing, testing these double VWAP bands here, trying to get near this IB high. Could never even touch it. So this goes completely untouched. I believe this will be considered a trend up day. And the VWAP bands was used as support. Very simple. Not too much to talk about here. Only caveat is all this is below the prior day's IB low, which would be a lower high and a lower low. Just something to be aware of, so take that with a grain of salt. Same situation here for the ES. We have our Sunday night, our Monday sell-off, and then our bear flag. As we're continuing from our bear flag, we try to go a little higher, and we ended up breaking this low too. So on both indices, this is looking fairly weak. But again, the price action was not really showing that too much on the DOM. Same situation here. Same situation with the engulfing candle. More of the coiling sideways, impulse, coiling sideways, impulse. We tried to coil here, but we ended up failing. Finding support at the IB high for the first 30 minutes in this VWAP band. Make that bands. And we can't stay below the IB high. So this is not as strong, as resilient as tech was, but same situation. I'm not sure if we would consider this a trend up if we close within this long-standing HOD. So I'm not sure about the specifics, but I mean we closed above the IB high, so I mean that's it's a nice show for the buyers. However, we're still below the prior IB low. So you want to take all this with a grain of salt. Something else that we didn't mention, there was a big failure, a lack of willingness to buy above the overnight high, which was a big lower high for the overnight session. Here, rejected again. Could not get above, could not stay above. You could get above, but you couldn't stay above. I believe this was the case as well for NQ, but they're a little stronger. So you have our 1, 2, 3. They had a little more action. If anything, they actually closed above their overnight high, or they're at least right on it. So just little small subtle cues. Not saying that tech is taking over or tech is being the resilient one, but you just want to look at these little small nuances. So I believe that's pretty much it. I don't have too much more to add. All this is subject to change tomorrow. I'd imagine we're going to see lighter-ish volume as we head into the close. And as we prep for the NVIDIA earnings, I don't plan to speculate on that too much. I may record it, but I don't plan to necessarily trade it. It really depends on what's happening. For the tech, I'm not sure if that's something I'll be interested in trading for the NQ, maybe for the S&P 500. I want to see if we're going to go down maybe to where these singles are for the 515s, because NVIDIA is going to have a lot of weight. Are we going to go through all-time highs? Is it going to be an up thrust? Are we going to have a down spike? Are we just going to kind of break through some of these zones and hold? Is it going to be a situation which we've seen many times where we shoot up, we shoot down, and then we just close sideways and then just like slowly drift? This is a horrible way to show the drifting, but I hope you get my point. But you just kind of like drift into the overnight sessions, and then you end up having like a gap up or a gap down. So it's going to be one of those. Who knows? The best thing you can do is prepare for either side and just trade what you see and not what you want to see. I don't think I have anything else to add here. I'm excited to see how the market responds to this anticipated earnings. Make sure you get your rest and save your capital if you do plan on participating in the market in the after hours. Seriously, some opportunities are going to show up on Thursday. Some opportunities are going to show up tomorrow afternoon. There's always tomorrow, so just take your time. But have a good afternoon.